President Buhari's request for additional loans with less than 3 weeks to the end of his administration and the National Assembly's expected role in safeguarding Nigeria's finances. We're now being joined here by Ivie Omoregie, founding partner at Sky Advisory, a firm based here in Lagos, Nigeria, which specializes in mediation, corporate and commercial advisory. Ivie is also an energy and project finance lawyer. It's good to have you with us.
Thank you so much for having me.
All right, you heard a little bit about what Ben Akabueze said there, but how did we get to this point? Weren't the warning signs there when it comes to excessive borrowing, you think, over time?
I believe the warning signs are there, have always been there, but unfortunately they are being ignored. I don't believe that the current administration truly cares about the implications of such high levels of borrowing. It's not their business. After a matter of days, they're going to be out of office and they're leaving a mess for the new administration to take over. And unfortunately, it's the Nigerian masses that are having to face the implications of this. These people are selling our country effectively. And if the money was being borrowed for constructive reasons, for implementation of infrastructure and for things that are money yielding, then it's understandable. Yeah. All countries borrow money. But I question what they're using the money for. It's unfortunate we've gotten here, but we just need to really talk about the issues. We need to address the issues. We need the National Assembly to do what they are elected to do. They're not talking enough. In some instances, they are even aggravating the situation. You've seen the National Assembly's personal budget risen from 113 billion to 228 billion in a matter of 1 year. There's many instances where the budget is presented to the National Assembly and for them to vet it and go through it. And in some instances, they're expected to reduce the figures, but they come back and they've increased it. So I don't know what's going on here. I think as a country, we're very quick to look at the presidency, but we're not addressing the fact that the National Assembly have a strong role to play with all this excessive borrowing. And it seems like right now, with what I'm seeing, they are just guaranteeing their pensions. They don't care what's going to happen after they leave. And it's really, really sad.
They've been trying very, very hard. First of all, Ben Akabueze said that Nigeria is in trouble. In his own words, he said our revenue is too small to sustain the size of our debt. And the federal government has gone massively into overdrive, trying to convince us why they should be borrowing with about probably 2 weeks or less than that to May 29. You look at that and you say to yourself, from the outside and as a financial expert, does it make any sense, looking at it, that you would institute a project whereby you will spend this much, about over 38 billion, I think, when you look at the figures, in terms of how do you justify that amount of spending in this short space of time? Because they say government is a continuum, so certainly they will start it off in order to finish it. Doesn't make any financial sense.
Makes none whatsoever. I can liken it to a board of directors. You've got your chairman, he's about to retire in 2 weeks' time. And at that point, he's taking on more loans for the company. There is no company, there's no reasonable company in this world that would not see it as some form of misappropriation of company funds. You can't positively implement anything within that short space of time. It doesn't make no sense. It's really, really, really concerning, and nobody's speaking about it. All our elder statesmen are not talking. They're not saying making their voices heard. It would not happen in a private company. It would not happen in a public company. So why are we allowing it to happen in our country? Nigeria is a form of a company. We should see it as that. And there's nowhere that would happen. The chairman's about to leave. He starts to borrow money. You would just question it, like, why are you doing that? Like, what for? You can't implement anything constructive in 2 weeks. So what do you intend to use this money for? Like I said, if they were borrowing and the money is being used for constructive things, and we can see a direct relation between borrowing this money and attracting more foreign direct investment, it's fine. People borrow money all the time. You can borrow 10 million naira and you know that if I invest this money, I'm going to make 50. It's not a loss. You've just made a 40 million naira profit from nowhere. But where you've borrowed 10 million naira and you've used it to buy a new car or fund a holiday, you still have to pay it back at some point.
Yeah.
We as a country still have to pay it back at some point. Right now, we have a revenue of roughly 10 trillion a year. But our total borrowing right now is 46 trillion. That means we've got 46 years to pay off what we currently have. And you are still borrowing money. As of 2010, I believe, the total borrowed was 800 billion naira. So how have we gotten from 800 billion in 2010 to 46 trillion 13 years later? It's I don't even know the percentage increase, but it is absolutely preposterous.
All right, Ivie, like you said, it's one thing to borrow, and it's another to actually service that debt continuously. Now, the outgoing government also said a few weeks ago that it had settled some debts owed countries like China and, of course, India. But how comforting is that? We're now having this coming up as well, like a drop in the ocean, as it were.
We're servicing some debt, but the debt is still there. We are borrowing money to fund reoccurring expenditure. We are borrowing money to pay off old debts. It does not make any kind of business sense whatsoever. There is no public company in this world that would be allowed to run their business like this. So why are we allowing them to run our country like this? You've paid off debt, but you're borrowing more money. It doesn't make any sense. The idea is that we need to reduce the debt to as much as possible, implement some fiscal policies that would encourage businesses to thrive. We need the foreigners to feel comfortable bringing their money into Nigeria. Nigeria on a good day is a high-risk investment, but we need to reassure them that we as a people, we know what we're doing. So I find it cringeworthy because I wonder what other governments think when they look at things that we do or we allow to be done. There's nowhere you're seeing this apart from sub-Saharan Africa. All governments around the world are borrowing money. But Africans, or Nigeria specifically, we're borrowing money at ridiculous interest rates. We're allowing them to literally buy our country. Majority of these loans, they are secured against future oil revenues, and we are taking the money at ridiculous rates.
And another thing, Ivie, if I may just come in here, is not just the federal government borrowing here, but you also have state governments borrowing as well. So it's a 2 or 3 pronged problem here.
It makes me question the minds of our leaders. I am very, very patriotic. I believe in a better Nigeria. And I believe that majority of them do have good intentions, because I've always stressed that there's easier ways to steal money than entering politics. But as a group, and I'm not just talking about the governors and the president, I'm talking about the House of Assembly, I'm talking about the state houses. All of them are in it together. There is a consensus, and I don't know the motives behind it, but I do not believe it's for our betterment.
All right. I was in the meeting some years ago where Professor Yemi Osinbajo, the vice president, said that debt is not entirely bad, almost invariably saying debt is actually good in some instances, looking at how things play out. And in the corporate world, they always say that sometimes debt is good. And they've taken that particular school of thought and probably gone haywire and just gone on a borrowing spree. Where and when is debt not a bad thing? Looking at how things are, and where is that threshold? Where do you now cross the line?
Debt is good. Like if you're doing basic accounts, someone owing you money is not a bad thing, as long as the person can repay. You borrowing money is not a bad thing, as long as you have good intentions with the money. Like I said before, I borrowed 10 million naira. I have XYZ projects to execute. I know that if I borrow this money and I'm using debt to service the investment, I can make 50, 60 million. I have literally made free money. It wasn't my money in the first place. I pay back I borrowed 10 million, I paid back maybe 12 million. It's cool because the total money that was generated from that project was in excess of 50, 60 million. Where debt becomes bad is when the money being borrowed is being misappropriated for personal projects.
But no, the reason why I ask this question because I'm sure in their minds of mind, these guys are not silly. These guys are probably technocrats, and some of them will pride themselves that they've gotten degrees and also gotten probably some of the best knowledge from around the world. Because I'm sure they will be able to justify that several of these debts that are being incurred is for a good reason. And they are looking at their projections and their numbers probably add up that down the line, it would actually make sense and it will actually be profitable and beneficial to Nigerians. I'm just trying to play the devil's advocate here.
I understand what you're saying, right? If we as Nigerian citizens living in Nigeria, we could see a direct correlation between money being borrowed and our lives, our day-to-day lives in Nigeria. Like I said, the debt has gone from 800 million to 46 trillion. If we were seeing Nigeria was like a Dubai, do you understand? We've got 24 hours light, the roads are perfect, the security personnel are being well catered for, healthcare is perfect, education is perfect, everything was just moving steadily. We would not be as emotional about the actions of our leaders. In as much as we have seen an increase or we have seen betterment in Nigeria between 2010 and now 2023. It's not corresponding with the money that has been borrowed, the money that has been spent. And that's the major thing. What are you using the money for? This recent borrowing spree, I can only call it a borrowing spree. You don't have enough time to implement anything constructive. Yeah. So what are you using the money for? And that's the major concern. All governments borrow. America borrows, England borrows, Russia borrows, China borrows, but what are they using the money for? And that is the major red flag here, especially in light of the fact that you've got a matter of hours left in office.
Metaphorically.
I mean, we're going to talk about the incoming administrations, with our credit, very poor ratings out there right now, and of course with all these debt issues. So what are the prospects here? Is Nigeria still, you talked about the high-risk investment environment for Nigeria as well, but what are the prospects for the new administration? Where would you advise in terms of, where are we going with this? The debt is still there, but is there some kind of light at the end of the tunnel?
The debt is still there. If I was a part of the new administration, first and foremost, I would do an audit. I would definitely do an audit, and some people need to be held accountable. I feel in Nigeria there's no accountability. People disappear. Oh, the snake swallowed it. How? Right? People need to go to prison. People need to start going to prison and serving serious jail term, right? If I was part of the new administration, I would implement some fiscal policies that enable businesses to thrive. We've had issues in the last few weeks with Nigerian customs. Nothing is coming out, nothing is going. And things like that make doing business in Nigeria ridiculously difficult. I will address the parallel market versus the official market. Doesn't make sense. Does not make any kind of sense that you can buy for 450 naira to $1 and I'm having to buy for 750. It needs to be one uniformed forex market. I would address the electricity situation. Yes, it's getting better, but it's not quite there yet. Subsidy has to be removed. We have to test it. We have to buy.
How do we do that?
We're still borrowing to service that.
Because the point is,
the essence of the subsidy in the first place.
It's almost like a Hydra head problem. How do you cut it off without two more heads of problems arising?
The political will to implement what she just said about, heads will have to roll and people have to be held accountable. That's another issue here.
and that's why I always say that we need to, aside from the presidency, there are other people involved in the management of this country, and they are not doing what they're supposed to do. With regards to subsidy, it just has to happen. Boom, boom, it's gone. Majority of the money that is being forecasted in the budget is to service the subsidy. Who benefits from this? I don't. So I might as well have better light, reduce time, and reduce customs duties, more better policies and policies for my business and having to chest a higher fuel charge.
All right. Ivie, it's unfortunate we've run out of time. Thank you very much for stopping by today here on Newsday.
Thank you for having me.
It was a pleasure.